April 2009. Cold rain poured down on the pine forest surrounding Lake Wynoochee in Washington state, where a group of workers was repairing an old log house on Wynoochee Road. The light from their flashlights shone across the mottled basement floor, reflecting off a patch of differently colored cement that no one had touched in over half a century. Control. We need forensic support at this address. Possible human remains. The construction manager's voice rang out, trembling, then fell silent amid the sound of falling rain. What began as an ordinary construction job had now turned into the scene of a secret buried deep in the earth, something that would answer the questions haunting Grays Harbor County for 51 years. Beneath the thick layer of cement, the forensic team discovered a hollow space, and inside it, the first human bone fragments emerged. Next to them was a .22 shell casing, a broken chair frame, and a faded piece of green fabric. Everything lay right under the house that once belonged to the Grover family, where a woman named Evelyn Grover vanished on the night of November 1958. For decades, Evelyn's disappearance was just an unsolved mystery. One rainy night, the kitchen light still on, dinner unfinished, and the husband, Christopher Grover, called the police to report that his wife might have left on her own. No signs of struggle, no broken doors, only one detail overlooked in the young Inspector Arthur Bell's report: the smell of fresh cement from the basement. The file was quickly closed, classified as voluntary disappearance. But some people never believed that. Bell, the first to arrive at the scene, kept the original negative films when he saw the documents being altered. He noted in his notebook, "Fresh cement smell, not checked." Years later, that line became the key to reopening the entire case. When the Washington State Cold Case Unit was established in 2009, investigator Hannah Krause stumbled upon file hash 584721 in the archives. Bell's notes, along with irregularities in the old report, led her to decide to reopen the case. And right at that house, ground-penetrating radar GPR detected a hollow space exactly where Bell had described. The discovery at Wynoochee was not just the end of a missing person case. It was the first domino in a chain of events, exposing secrets hidden for half a century in the small community of Washington state, where honor was protected by silence, and justice was buried under a layer of cement. Because when the truth was finally unearthed, the suspect was not a stranger, not some nameless drifter. It was someone who had been trusted, someone who had lived in that town for years, carrying an unimaginable secret. The Evelyn Grover case is not just a mystery solved, it is proof of the persistence of people who never stop searching. A veteran investigator who kept evidence for half a century, a young successor daring to dig up the truth, and the power of modern forensic science that gave voice back to a victim silenced for too long. This is also the story of a community divided by silence. When Evelyn disappeared, rumors spread throughout Montesano, neighbors suspected each other, families stopped talking, and that small town carried invisible scars for decades. Those cracks would widen when the truth finally came to light after 51 years. What makes this case particularly haunting is that the answer was always so close. The evidence lay right under the floor, just a few inches of concrete from the world above. And the person who knew that best was the one who stood beside the police, watching them write the line. No signs of foul play. Where are you watching from today? Please leave your location in the comments below. I'm always curious how far these stories spread and how they connect us. Tonight we'll go back to the winter of 1958, follow each dusty page of the file, and witness the unexpected turning point, the turning point that brought belated justice to the woman forgotten for over half a century. This is a story of loss, silence, betrayal, and ultimately justice delayed, but never denied. Montesano, a small town in Grays Harbor County, Washington state, nestled between fir ridges and the year-round misty Wynoochee River, in late 1958, still maintained a slow pace of life, where everyone knew each other through quick greetings on the main street. In the lakeside residential area, The Grover family's log house nestled beside old pines, a few miles from the town center. Christopher Grover, 30 years old, the Montesano High School gym coach, was seen as an exemplary man, reserved, disciplined, and devoted. His wife Evelyn, 26, had quit teaching after giving birth to their second child to stay home and care for the family. They had 2 young children, a 4-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl, who often played in the yard on quiet autumn afternoons. Neighbors described their house as always lit early, turned off late, with the radio playing familiar classical music programs every evening. That evening, November 14, 1958, light rain fell on the porch roof, yellow bulbs casting through the misty fog, making the house look like a lone point of light by the water's edge. Mrs. Elizabeth Clifton, who lived one house away, remembered that around nearly midnight, while locking her windows, she still saw light spilling from the Grover kitchen, a light that was never left on that late. She heard no car leaving, nor saw anyone step outside. The next morning, as the sun just peeked over the tree-covered hills, the lights in the house were still on, curtains not yet drawn. Something made the quiet morning air feel heavy. Christopher Grover walked over to the neighbors in a dew-soaked jacket, face pale and tired, saying his wife was not in the house. Her bed still neatly made, her coat still hanging in its place. He had searched the entire garden, out to the lake's edge, but found no trace. After a few minutes of silence, he returned, picked up the telephone receiver on the wooden table, dialed the Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Dispatch, and reported that his wife, Evelyn Grover, had disappeared during the night. On the other end of the line, the duty officer heard the voice of a tired but controlled man, jotting a few short lines in the log. Reporter, Christopher Grover. Address, Wynoochee Road. Wife missing since previous evening. No belongings taken. 2 young children still at home. The report was immediately forwarded to Inspector Arthur Bell, 35 years old, with seniority in handling missing persons cases in the area, and young Officer Dale Morton. The 2 left headquarters while the sky was still gray, drizzle streaking across the road. Early morning Montesano was quiet, the smell of wet wood and pine needles filling the air. When the car stopped in front of the Grover family home, the porch light was still on, light smoke from the chimney dissolving into the mist. Christopher Grover greeted them at the door, face haggard, saying he had searched the garden and out to the lake's edge, but found no signs. Bell asked him to wait on the porch, allowing the 2 to proceed with documenting the scene. The front door was ajar, hinges intact, no signs of prying. The living room was lit, furniture neat. On the table were still the dinner dishes, 2 cold coffee cups. The radio on the shelf was unplugged, the wooden chair near the window tipped over, one leg broken, wood fragments scattered on the floor. Bell bent down, saw a skid mark about 30 centimeters long, the wood floor surface slightly darker, light reflecting dully. He marked it with a pen and noted the position. In the kitchen, Morton lifted the lid of the soup pot on the gas stove. Water evaporated, bottom blackened, burnt smell, mixed with a faint fishy odor of something spilled on the floor. Near the cabinet base was a small dark stain, about the size of a hand. He swabbed a sample with cotton, sealed it in a paper bag. Bell checked the back door, found it shut tight, latch intact. Under the steps, he discovered a single beige women's shoe, wet with rain, sole caked with dried mud. The shoe was small, matching the size the husband described for his wife. When Morton opened the basement door, a rush of cold, damp air surged up, carrying the smell of fresh cement. The wooden stairs had men's shoe prints, round-toed leather, similar to the pair Christopher was wearing. The basement contained only wooden crates of tools, part of the floor recently smoothed, cement still glistening with moisture. Bell noted in his book, fresh cement smell, uneven floor color, needs checking. The 2 photographed each area, assigning numbers: broken chair, dark stain on floor, burnt soup pot, single shoe, new cement area. Morton estimated the disappearance occurred while the victim was on the ground floor, based on uneaten food and lights still on. No signs of break-in, No evidence anyone left, no footprints, no tire tracks on the gravel path. When the two children were called down, they said Mom had tucked them in early. Then they heard nothing more. Mid-morning, Sheriff Harold Dunning arrived. He walked around the house, heard Bell's report, then concluded, no evidence of criminal activity. Case possibly voluntary departure. Bell stayed calm, only suggesting sending evidence to the county blood lab to identify the dark stain's origin. Dunning agreed, but stressed not sealing the house to avoid drawing attention. Before leaving, Bell looked back at the quiet living room, where daylight had filtered through the fogged windows. He wrote the final line in the preliminary report. Scene shows no entry traces, but unusual details exist. Broken chair, suspected blood liquid stain, fresh cement smell, single woman's shoe. Temporarily classify, missing, cause undetermined. That same afternoon, Christopher Grover was invited to the Grays Harbor County Sheriff's headquarters to provide an official statement. He arrived on time, neatly dressed, shirt buttoned to the collar, appearing tired but composed. Inspector Arthur Bell noted in the record that he was cooperative, but answered cautiously, as if carefully considering each word. Christopher said his wife, Evelyn, had shown signs of instability for a long time. He said recently she often had insomnia, was forgetful, and sometimes skipped meals, easily emotional, and sometimes fearful for no reason. When asked about their relationship, he replied that marriage was normal, no serious conflicts, but Evelyn tended to be pessimistic, often talked about leaving the area to find peace. Bell asked if she had ever left before. Christopher replied, never really left, but sometimes she drove to the lake for a few hours to clear her mind. He emphasized that this time might just be one of those times, except she hasn't returned. When Bell asked about the victim's personal items, Christopher affirmed no belongings were missing, wife's coat still in the closet, purse and watch on the dresser, car still in the garage. He said he only discovered she was gone when waking in the middle of the night, not finding her in bed, thinking she went to the kitchen, so he searched, then saw lights on, door unlocked, soup boiled dry. He stated he searched the yard, out to the lake edge, and returned to call police. Bell asked again for the exact time. Christopher replied, after midnight, probably around 12:30. Bell's notes showed a small discrepancy with the time the neighbor reported, seeing kitchen light near midnight. He marked it in red pen. Time inconsistency, needs verification. When asked about weapons in the house, Christopher said he had a valid permit for a Remington .22 pistol, used for target shooting. Gun kept in a locked cabinet in the study, key with him. Bell requested description of the weapon's condition. Christopher replied, still in the cabinet, untouched. He said Evelyn was afraid of guns, usually avoided noticing it. Morton noted in the record, not checked directly, cabinet not opened. After answering the main questions, Christopher presented Bell with a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note, slanted script, blue ink, reading, I need to go away for a while to think things over. Don't look for me, take care of the kids. He said he found the note on the kitchen table this morning, after police left. Bell examined it, noted but did not comment. He observed the handwriting was inconsistent, some characters shaky and off, but still placed it in the file bag. When asked about possible involvement of others, Christopher denied. Evelyn wasn't close to anyone outside nearby neighbors. We lived privately. He also affirmed, no conflicts leading to leaving. Throughout the interrogation lasting over 2 hours, Bell observed that Christopher's right hand had a scratch along the thumb joint, dried but still red. When asked, he said it was from bumping into the garage door yesterday. His voice was even, eyes not avoiding contact. Bell noted no resistant attitude, but in the final notes, he wrote, husband unusually calm, controlled tone, describes victim's behavior with interpretive tendency, unverifiable. The interrogation ended in the late afternoon. Christopher signed the statement, thanked them, and left headquarters. Bell stayed at the desk, reviewing the record, details about timing, household items, and the unverified going-away letter. He circled in red the items needing confirmation. 1. Time of disappearance, estimated 12:30 a.m. 2. Origin of the letter, 3. Condition of the .22. Before leaving the room, he added a final line to his duty log. No genuine anxiety detected. Husband controls speech and actions. Need to cross-reference scene evidence before concluding. On the morning of November 16, 1958, after completing the initial report and the husband's statement, Inspector Arthur Bell proposed expanding the search area to a 5-mile radius around the Grover home. The sky remained overcast, drizzle falling lightly, wind from Lake Wynoochee blowing beatingly cold, thick fog reducing visibility to just a few dozen meters. 3 search teams were deployed, one led by Bell along the dirt road toward the lake, a second commanded by Officer Morton sweeping the western forest, and a third consisting of 2 local police along the main road out to town. In the immediate area around the house, wild grass was trampled, a few shoe prints mixed in the mud, but mostly from the search teams. Bell walked slowly, carefully examining the soft road edges for unusual traces. Near the turnoff to the small path down to the lake, he noticed a series of tire tracks shallowly imprinted in the wet mud, direction from the main road to the water's edge and back. The tracks were fairly fresh, the deeper grooves indicating the vehicle had stopped for a moment before turning. Bell guessed it could be a local fisherman's vehicle, but due to its proximity to the Grover house, he still noted suspicious tire tracks, distance 1.2 miles. At the lakeside area, Morton discovered a small object floating among the wet reeds, a piece of light green fabric, torn and mud-stained coarse fibers, possibly from a dress or women's blouse. He used tweezers to pick it up, placed it in a preservation bag, labeled Fabric Sample AA, collected at Wynoochee Lakeshore. When Bell arrived, they checked the surroundings together and found nearby another women's shoe, beige, same type as the one found the previous day under the back steps. The sole was partially mud-covered, lying on its side in the grass at the water's edge. Bell bent down to observe. The shoe had no tears, only the characteristic lake area clay mud. He requested photos, measured the distance from the discovery point to the shore, then sealed it for transport. Footprints in the area were only from the 2 officers, no new ones or skid marks. The lake water was calm, no strange objects floating. A rescue team member waded out a few meters to check, confirming deep and slippery mud, difficult to leave footprints, if only walking along the shore. In the western forest, the second team found nothing but a few wind-broken branches. No signs of human or vehicle movement. The interim report noted, no traces proving the victim was alive or had left the area. At noon, all evidence was brought back to the Grover house for comparison with previous samples. Bell placed the 2 shoes side by side, checking color and size, completely matching, same brand soles, same wear pattern. He concluded they were almost certainly Evelyn Grover's pair. The green fabric was compared to photos taken of the victim's closet the previous day. In the closet was a light green dress with similar pattern, but still present. Bell suspected the fabric might be a different item, but same material, or torn inside the house. He requested sending soil samples from the shoes and fabric for mineral testing to determine differences from soil around the house. That same afternoon, when the search teams returned, they reported no additional evidence or new witnesses. Farms around the lake were canvassed. No one saw a woman walking alone at night, nor heard unusual sounds. From the main road to the lake, there was only one exit, so if Evelyn left by car, someone would certainly have seen. No vehicles were reported missing. Bell concluded in the temporary log, no evidence victim left area by vehicle, items found likely belonged to victim, but timing of appearance at scene undetermined. When the report was submitted to Sheriff Harold Dunning, he skimmed it and immediately folded it. Dunning believed the found items lacked criminal significance and requested keeping information confidential to avoid community speculation. He reiterated his view that the woman may have left home for personal reasons. No signs of foul play. Bell did not argue, only noting in the summary, search results collected soil samples, fabric fibers, women's shoes. No traces of strangers. No indications victim alive. Victim's departure behavior unverifiable. Sheriff requests media silence. As dusk fell, fog thickened again over the lake surface. Bell stood looking toward the darkening water, the question repeating in his mind without answer. If she really had left this place, then why were the shoes here, less than 2 miles from home? 2 days after the sweep around Lake Wynoochee, Inspector Arthur Bell and Officer Dale Morton began collecting statements from those living near the Grover house. The lakeside residential area had only 5 households, each dozens of meters apart, mostly farmer or mill worker families. The first interviewed was Mrs. Elizabeth Clifton, 62 years old, living right next door, who had seen the Grover house lights on throughout the night of the incident. In her statement, she recounted that around nearly midnight, while preparing to close the windows, she heard loud voices from the Grover house. I couldn't make out the words, but the man's voice was very loud. The woman's like trying to respond, she said. Then a heavy thud, possibly something knocked to the floor, then silence. She waited a few minutes, thinking they were just arguing, not wanting to interfere. When she returned to the window, the kitchen light was still on, but the radio off. Mrs. Clifton confirmed she saw no one leave or heard a car start. The next morning, when looking again, the lights were still on as before. Bell noted, argument heard, object falling sound, no one seen leaving. Timing matches 11:45 p.m., 12 a.m. The second interviewed was Mr. Francis Cobb, living in the house across the road. He said that night it was raining, he was up late reading the paper, and heard a window slamming shut from the Grover house. Then a few minutes later, a heavy sound, like someone dragging a chair or something heavy across the wood floor. He thought wind had blown the window open, so paid no further attention. Bell asked if he saw car lights or people on the road. He replied, absolutely not. The remaining households in the area heard no unusual sounds beyond rain and wind. One man working at the Forest Ranger Station, on patrol that night, confirmed no strangers or vehicles moving in the area from midnight to morning. The summary report clearly stated, no witnesses saw victim leave house, area quiet, no traffic activity. That afternoon, Bell and Morton went to the local clinic where the Grover family was registered. Samuel Turner, practicing for over 20 years, said Evelyn had come in for checkups 3 times in the past 6 months. He pulled the records, showing the first 2 visits noted as fall in kitchen, bump into stairs. Bell requested detailed injury descriptions. In the first record, Turner wrote bruise on right forearm, 4 inches long, round, clear edges, no abrasions. The second, bruise on left neck, oval shape, 3 centimeters diameter. The most recent, 1 month prior, she came for hip pain, difficulty sleeping. When asked further, Turner hesitated. I remember she said she slipped, but seemed tense. I asked if her husband was with her, she said he's waiting in the car. He did not report suspected abuse, because no clear evidence, and at that time, no mandatory reporting rules. Bell asked if the injuries could be from a hard object, or being grabbed and pulled hard. Turner replied, possible round bruises, usually from concentrated force, not from falling. He wrote a new confirmation, injuries not fully consistent with ordinary falls. Morton photographed the medical records, filed them in the case. On the way back, Bell stopped at the grocery store near the main road, where Evelyn occasionally shopped. The owner, Mrs. Lorna Phelps, remembered the victim, usually came with her 2 young children, spoke softly, but rarely lingered to chat. The week before disappearing, she bought milk and sugar. I asked why her hand was scratched. She smiled and said bumped into a door, she said. No one heard her talk about wanting to leave home or financial difficulties. When compiling the statements, Bell noticed a coincidence. All witnesses described Evelyn as reserved, little social interaction, and none had ever heard her mention leaving the family. None of them saw her after the night of November 14th. The last confirmed time everyone knew she was still in the house was before midnight, when neighbors heard arguing and something falling. At the end of the day, In the 12-page summary sent to Sheriff Dunning, Bell wrote the temporary conclusion: witness statements consistent about hearing conflict that night. No evidence proving victim left house voluntarily. Medical records show victim had injuries inconsistent with stated causes. Current data consistent with possibility of domestic assault. Dunning reviewed it, nodded, but made no comment. When he left the room, Bell closed the file folder, leaving on the desk the first page with his handwritten note: consistent details, argument sounds, signs of falling object, prior injuries, prominent hypothesis, domestic violence, possible escalation leading to disappearance. Night rain began pattering on the headquarters roof again, and in that steady rain sound, Bell sat alone rereading Mrs. Clifton's statement, the shaky words on yellowed paper. I heard the woman's voice cry out very faintly, then nothing more. After completing the witness interviews, Arthur Bell focused on processing the evidence collected at the scene. The Grays Harbor County Forensics Lab at that time had only basic equipment, so analysis was mostly done manually. On November 19, 1958, Bell and Officer Morton brought the samples to the temporary testing room at headquarters. The first sample was the dark stain collected from the kitchen floor, preserved in a sealed paper bag. The technician used Castle-Meyer solution to detect the presence of blood. When the reagent was dropped onto the sample, the solution immediately turned deep pink, positive reaction. The result was recorded in the log. Sample A, human blood, positive reaction. Bell requested blood typing using the standard ABO method, resulting in Group A+. According to the medical records provided by Dr. Turner, Evelyn Grover had the same blood type. The match could not confirm identity, but was sufficient to establish that the liquid at the scene was human blood and highly likely belonged to the victim. Bell immediately marked this evidence as critical sample. Meanwhile, the women's shoes, one recovered from outside the porch and the second found at the lakeshore, were brought in for comparison. Both were size 6, soft leather, beige, with soles worn in the same direction. Soil analysis on the shoes showed mineral composition identical to the dirt around the kitchen floor and back hallway, containing no organic impurities or the damp sand characteristic of the lakeshore. This proved the shoes were primarily worn indoors, not moved outdoors during the rainy night. Morton noted in the report, no evidence shoes left the interior area. Discovery locations may result from post-fall relocation. Bell continued examining the green fabric piece. Under magnification, the fibers were stretched and torn unevenly, the edge stained with a small dark substance that also gave a weak positive Castle-Meyer reaction. This portion was stored separately as Sample B. When the preliminary report was completed, Bell signed it and forwarded the file to Sheriff Harold Dunning to request permission to send all samples to the Washington State Laboratory in Olympia for detailed blood type and timing analysis. However, 2 days later, the file was returned with Dunning's short pencil note, unnecessary. Missing person case, no criminal matter. Along with this order, the samples remained in county evidence storage. Undeterred, Bell personally copied the preliminary test results into his private notebook. He noted an irregularity in the internal report copy signed by Dunning. The description blood stain on kitchen floor had been changed to liquid stain suspected from nosebleed. He compared handwriting and realized the edit was not in the technician's pen. Bell stayed silent, but photocopied the original with the technician's signature and filed it separately in his personal records. When cross-referencing with Christopher Grover's statement, he noticed a suspicious coincidence. The husband had said, "My wife often had nosebleeds when stressed." This detail was recorded after the preliminary forensic report was altered, leading Bell to suspect someone had accessed his file and used the information to bolster the husband's statement. However, without specific evidence of data leakage, he only noted in his log, notable coincidence between statement and report revision. Parallel to the blood test results, Warden analyzed mud traces from the floor and basement. The soil sample had a fine structure, silt composition matching the dirt directly under the porch. It contained no sand or moss from the lakeshore, meaning the mud traces formed from movement within the house, not from outside entry. Morton concluded, mud traces do not prove third-party entry, likely from household residents' activity on the night of disappearance. When all results were compiled, Bell prepared a 10-page report summarizing the dark stain was human blood group A+. Matching the victim, mud traces confirmed interior movement, no evidence of stranger entry. He submitted this with a request for expanded analysis to Dunning. 3 days later, the file was returned with a new note. No further testing needed. Hypothesis: missing person had nosebleed, left stain on floor. Case remains classified voluntary disappearance. Bell carefully placed the altered original in the official file, keeping the unedited copy in his locker. That evening, in his duty log, he wrote only one sentence. The Castle-Meyer reaction doesn't lie, but people can make the writing say otherwise. Outside, wind from the lake blew across the headquarters roof, carrying November's characteristic chill and damp pine scent. Bell closed the notebook, blew out the desk lamp, the image still echoing in his mind of the lit kitchen, with the broken chair and deep pink blood stain under the light. On November 23, 1958, after completing the initial analysis report, Arthur Bell decided to take one more step. The blood, soil, and fabric test results, while insufficient for criminal evidence, combined with the matching details, the blood type match, fresh cement smell, and uneven basement floor, suggested something abnormal to him. He drafted a supplemental search request, asking for a warrant to open a portion of the Grover basement floor to determine origin of new material smell and check for possible covered traces. In the request, Bell specified the examination was technical only, to rule out suspicion rather than confirm crime. The file was forwarded to Sheriff Harold Dunning's office the same day. 2 days later, he was called to Dunning's office. The sheriff placed the file on the desk and said evenly, "I've reviewed it. You have no legal basis for this warrant. No witnesses saw violence, no evidence linking the husband. You're trying to prove a theory." Bell explained the fresh cement smell and uneven floor section. But Dunning interrupted, "Fresh cement isn't a crime. They might be repairing. No one authorizes digging a man's basement without criminal charges." He concluded briefly, "Shelve it." Still a missing person case. The discussion ended there, and Bell's file was returned with a note, "Request denied. Lacks criminal basis." Bell left the office feeling helpless. In his internal memo book, he added a final line. "House search warrant rejected. Need to monitor resident activity at address." That evening, he drove to Wynoochee Road, stopping a distance from the Grover house. The porch light was still on, inside dark basement window cracked open. The damp cement smell still lingered in the air, mixed with fresh paint odor. The next morning, he returned with Morton for an official administrative check, framed as structural safety verification. Christopher Grover opened the door, appearing friendly. He said he was repairing the floor due to water damage after the rains. The basement was now completely different. Walls freshly painted white, floor covered in thick gray paint smell overpowering the cement. Bell asked about the added concrete pour. Christopher replied naturally, "I just patched the cracks, wanted a flat floor for storage." Morton noted, "Basement newly painted, old floor layer unobservable. Cement smell gone." They could not measure or sample without a warrant. That afternoon, Bell reported to Dunning that the homeowner had repaired the basement. Dunning nodded, saying, "Good, no more bother. This should stop here." When Bell mentioned continued monitoring, Dunning only replied, "Unnecessary, we don't investigate without a case." That statement ended all of Bell's efforts within official channels. He understood the case was slipping from his grasp. In the final summary sent upstairs, the conclusion was written per Dunning's requirement. Through examination process, no criminal elements discovered. Grover basement repaired by homeowner due to rain damage. Case file maintained status, missing, cause undetermined. That evening, returning to the empty office, Bell reopened the initial scene photos. The broken chair, the dark stain under the kitchen light, the single shoe by the door. He placed on the desk the paper stamped basement search request denied, and stared long at Dunning's bold ink line. On the wall, the Grays Harbor County map, marked with red pins, the missing persons cases over the past decade, all closed. Bell took a pen and added below a new name, Evelyn Grover, Wynoochee Road, November 1958. When he turned off the light, the room sank into darkness. Only the street lamps glow through the window, illuminating the corner file cabinet, where file hash 584721 had just been placed, temporarily closed, as if it were merely a case of a woman leaving home for reasons unknown. Early January 1959. Nearly 2 months after Evelyn Grover vanished, the Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Office officially announced the end of the preliminary investigation. In the internal memo, signed by Sheriff Harold Dunning, the case was classified as voluntary disappearance. A person leaving residence by personal choice, no signs of crime. File hash 584721 was moved to civil archives, not on the active criminal case list. The evidence collected from the Grover house, broken chair, dark liquid sample, green fabric piece, and women's shoes, was sealed and transferred to basement storage at County Sheriff Headquarters. In the handover log, Bell listed each item clearly, but a week later upon rechecking, he found 2 evidence bags had been swapped. Codes no longer matching the original log. Morton said the admin department had reorganized storage, many old items discarded for space. No document confirmed. The Grover evidence was on the destruction list, yet no one could prove it remained intact. Mid-February, the Grays Harbor Herald ran a short notice on page 3, headline, "Young Mother Reported Missing. Husband Says She Left Without Warning." The content was just a few lines. Evelyn Grover, 26, Wynoochee Road resident, left home last November. Police found no signs of foul play. Family advised to continue contact through civil channels. No follow-up articles appeared. The story quickly faded amid news of storm season and mill closures. In Montesano, people mentioned it only as a case of a woman walking out in winter, then stopped discussing it. At headquarters, Bell received the official summary signed by Dunning. The conclusion read, "No verified evidence of criminal act or coercion. Case status, voluntary missing person." Below the sheriff's signature was the county's round seal, closing the entire investigation. Bell filed the document, glancing at the year's case list, most closed in similar fashion. He felt empty, every detail gathered over 2 months. The blood stain, cement smell, argument testimonies, now just faint notes. The last day before the file went to storage, Bell made a personal copy. On the back of the final page, he added a few small, even lines. No evidence victim left the house, no witnesses, no footprints, no transportation. Voluntary departure hypotheses lack basis. He folded it, locked the copy in his desk drawer, then signed the original handover. As the storage clerk took it away, Bell only watched, saying nothing. That March, rain still lingered. Wynoochee Road flooded, the new cement in the Grover backyard dried white under mist. The house stayed shuttered all winter, empty except for memories of the night, the kitchen light burned through. In his personal journal, Bell added one final line for the case. If this truly was a voluntary disappearance, no one ever prepared to leave so thoroughly as to take nothing. Early summer 1961, Arthur Bell was assigned to review old archived files for the Grays Harbor County Sheriff's periodic inventory. It was repetitive admin work no one wanted, but for Bell, a chance to revisit cases stuck in memory. On the inventory list, he noted file hash 584721. Evelyn Grover's disappearance, closed nearly 2 years. The file sat in voluntary disappearances, amid dusty folders from the prior decade. Opening the accompanying evidence box, he saw the item count mismatched the 1959 handover log. Instead of 5 evidence bags, only 4 remained, one without original labeling. Specifically, the dark stain from kitchen floor sample was relabeled in new red pen. Sample C, domestic spill. 3 scene photos were taped in a different envelope, no longer in the Kodak film set he had shot. The first 2 showed the kitchen corner and broken chair. The third was the basement area from the stair. That photo was now gone, leaving only the marker, photo 7/12, basement entry. Bell searched the original negative roll, but found the corresponding section cut out. He took the issue to the archive room, asking the clerk. The clerk said, early 1960, some evidence and photos from cases no longer legally relevant were destroyed or rearranged. The accompanying admin report had a cold-typed note. Non-essential evidence destroyed. Bell requested the specific list, but the Grover case wasn't named. Only code 58, 4721, was handwritten at page bottom. He recognized the script. Sheriff Harold Dunning's no line explained why the basement photo and liquid sample were removed. That afternoon, Bell went to storage to check himself. The damp room smelled of moldy paper and old chemicals. He opened the second metal cabinet shelf, pulled the Kodak film box into light. Inside remained 9 negatives, numbers jumbled, 2 stuck at edges as if wetted then separated. He carefully peeled each, held to the desk lamp, and saw frames missing corner sections, signs of scissor cuts. The cut portions matched the stairwell basement area, where in 1958 he had noted fresh cement smell. Unable to act within authority, Bell quietly backed up what remained. He took the intact negatives to a private photo shop in Aberdeen, asked the owner to develop the full set and print a duplicate negative copy. The owner asked if an official receipt was needed. Bell replied, "No, just old records." 2 days later, he received the developed film and 2 spare negative sets. One set he returned to storage in place, the other he took home, hid in his wife's old tin box, labeled E.G.'d 1958. Originals. In that year's duty log, under June 17, Bell wrote briefly, reviewed file 58, 4721. One evidence item, 3 scene photos removed. Internal docs, note destruction of non-essential evidence. No accompanying legal order. High likelihood of internal interference. He did not report it upward, only sent a copy note to admin per procedure, knowing it would be filed away in another stack. In the weeks that followed, reviewing the list of cleared cases, Bell realized the Grover file wasn't the only one altered. A few other cases from the same period showed similar evidence tampering, but no one in the department seemed concerned. They all just shook their heads. Probably the paper rotted after a few years, couldn't keep it. To him that excuse was too simple to accept. That evening, Bell returned to his small apartment in Aberdeen. He took the tin box from the drawer, opened it, and examined each photo under the desk lamp. In one faded frame, he could still clearly see the kitchen wood floor, with the irregular dark stain, next to the broken chair and the shadow of something in the corner, part missing from the official file photos. He set the negative down and added a line to his personal journal. If they can erase a photo, they can erase a person. Keep everything. Then he closed the notebook, stored the tin box in the cabinet, and locked it securely. Amid the rain tapping on the window, he knew that from now on, the Evelyn Grover disappearance was no longer just a closed file, but a secret buried deep in the very cabinets of the sheriff's department where he served. Early 2009, the Washington State Department of Justice launched a program to reevaluate cold cases, screening unsolved files from before the 1980s. A special unit was formed within the State Patrol, Cold Case Unit, under the Olympia Investigation Office, tasked with classifying, digitizing, and reassessing each file based on criteria for potential physical evidence recovery. Among thousands of old files transferred from counties to central storage was a worn cardboard box faintly labeled Grays Harbor County, Missing Persons, 1950, 1960. Amid the yellowed documents, investigator Hannah Krause, 38, who had worked many missing persons reinvestigations, stumbled upon a thin folder coded hash 584721. Grover, Evelyn. The cover was faded, paper brittle, but inside remained intact typed reports, a blurry scene photocopy, and handwritten notes in black ink. Fresh cement smell, basement. Dark stain positive for human blood. Evidence not sent to state lab. In the bottom corner was the signature A. Bell. Cross read the entire contents straight through. The official conclusion, signed by Sheriff Harold Dunning in 1959, stated voluntary disappearance. However, Bell's margin notes told a different story. Detailed descriptions of the cement smell, indoor mud traces, and the denied basement search request. The handwriting was even, concise, but enough to make Krause pause. She red-marked the note, fresh cement smell, unverified, and moved the file to priority review. In her internal report to unit leadership, she wrote, "Suspected criminal indicators overlooked in initial investigation. File may yield recoverable old evidence." A week later, she searched the list of original investigators. All retired or deceased, except one name. Arthur Bell, born 1931, former Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Inspector, currently residing in Aberdeen. Personnel records showed he retired in 1981. No criminal record or discipline. Described by colleagues as meticulous, principled. Krause called the number in the directory. An elderly woman's voice answered, his wife, Lillian Bell. She confirmed her husband was still sharp, though frail, and kept a few old work notebooks. 2 days later, Krause drove from Olympia to Aberdeen. March rain was cold. Black pine rows misted along the highway. Bell's house was small. Dark wood walls, yard full of dry leaves. He greeted her at the door. Thin frame, silver hair, eyes still bright and alert. Hearing her purpose, Bell only nodded, paused silently, then went to his old study. Returning with a silver tin box. Inside were notebooks, scene photos, and a yellowed negative roll. "I thought no one remembered that case," he said, voice hoarse. Krause gently flipped the notebook, yellowed pages, neat handwriting. One entry dated November 17, 1958. Fresh cement smell, uneven floor color. Search request. Denied. Another page, photo 7/12, basement. Note, dark area under stairs. These notes exactly matched content, missing from the official file. Bell recounted that after closure, he rechecked evidence storage in 1961 and found photos cut, items removed. He kept the original negatives and copies in case someone wanted the truth. Krause listened intently. No recording, only pencil notes. When she asked his personal opinion, he replied slowly, "No one walks away leaving shoes and lights on all night. I said that in 1958, but no one listened." Krause left Aberdeen that afternoon, taking the tin box and a temporary loan permit copy. On the way back to Olympia, she stopped at a highway rest area, opened the photos under dim light. Though faded, the basement stair photo clearly showed an abnormal dark patch on the cement. On the back, Bell had inked, "Suspected newly poured cement area. Check thickness." The following week, Krause presented all findings to Cold Case Unit Command. After review, leadership approved #584721 for reinvestigation, aiming to verify integrity of remaining county evidence and re-examine the original site with modern forensics. The official report signed March 27, 2009, stated, based on original investigator Arthur Bell's file and unused initial notes, Evelyn Grover disappearance reopened as undetermined criminal case. Receiving the decision copy, Bell only nodded. He told Krause now, "At least someone is willing to read what was forgotten." She thanked him, then left the small house on a cloudy afternoon, quietly understanding that a file once labeled "voluntary missing" had entered a completely different chapter, one beginning the journey to recover what for over half a century, no one dared confirm where the truth lay beneath the cold cement in that basement. April 2009, after file #584721 was officially reopened. The Washington State Cold Case Unit sent a letter to Grays Harbor County Sheriff's Office to verify the original disappearance site. The house where the Grover family once lived on Wynoochee Road had long changed owners. Per land records, it now belonged to the Randalls, who bought it the previous year, and were repairing the foundation due to water damage. When the technical team arrived to survey, the basement had partial tile removal, exposing old cement floor. One worker relaying the floor noticed the cement near the stairs was darker gray than the rest, surface rough and uneven. Tapping it produced a hollow sound. The foreman found it odd, halted work, informed the owners, and the matter was passed to local authorities. 3 days later, investigator Hannah Kraus and the state forensic team arrived. The owners consented to full basement inspection for structural safety, unaware this was once a disappearance scene over half a century ago. Before starting, Kraus compared the current house layout to Bell's original sketch in his notebook. Dimensions nearly matched, with one minor change. The stairwell base area was now 5-7 centimeters thicker cement. Kraus noted in the log, evidence of supplemental floor pour post-original construction. The technical team deployed GPR, ground-penetrating radar, to map subsurface structure. The device sent radar waves through cement layers, returning color bands on screen showing material density. While the entire floor gave uniform signals, the stair-adjacent area showed a nearly 2-meter dark patch indicating hollowness. The field report noted, abnormal radar response, hollow structure approx. 0.5, 0.6 m below surface. This was sufficient for Kraus to immediately request an emergency excavation warrant from Grays Harbor County Court. Morning of April 28th, the warrant was approved. The state forensic team and local police representatives conducted limited excavation, witnessed by owners and 2 clerks. Surface paint and cement were hand-removed, then dug gradually. At about 40 centimeters depth, the shovel hit softer material mixed with clay and sand. A technician used a small trowel to scrape layers until revealing rotted wood fragments next to a small cylindrical metal object. Kraus bent down, used tweezers to lift it. A .22 shell casing, brass dulled but marked Remington. Nearby, soil slumped slightly, exposing an ivory bone fragment. The team immediately stopped, cordoned the area, photographed, and called additional forensic personnel. After nearly 6 hours, the entire stairwell base area was expanded. In the half-meter deep pit, they found multiple human bone fragments, including a partially shattered skull, arm bones, and femur. Under the damp soil remained a broken wooden frame, identified as part of an armchair, matching the style in 1958 scene photos. Additionally, the team found a faded light green fabric piece adhered to old cement. Kraus ordered recording each object's position, multi-angle photos, measurements, and a 1/20 scale scene map. No other metal items besides the casing, but surrounding foundation, showed sloppy patching, indicating hasty cement pour, not standard construction. By evening, collection was complete. All evidence, bones, casing, fabric, wood, was sealed separately, newly coated per state standards. Surrounding soil and old cement were sampled for chemical analysis. When the team cleaned the floor, the remaining hollow clearly formed a regular rectangle, 1.8 m long, about 0.9 m wide, nearly fitting an adult lying down. Kraus looked at the measurements, said nothing, only added a short note to her log. Coordinates, basement, under stairs, matches photo 7/12, Bell file. That night, 4 evidence crates were transported by specialized vehicle to the Olympia Forensic Lab. The handover log read, recovered human remains, probable adult female. Associated items, .22 shell casing, wooden chair frame, blue fabric fragment, all sealed and cold stored pending examination. In the report to Cold Case Unit, Kraus wrote, findings consistent with 1958 investigator Bell's notes. Abnormal cement structure concealed human remains and evidence. High probability crime scene. The next day, upon excavation news, Arthur Bell was notified by phone. He was silent for a long time, then said softly, I knew that floor didn't belong in the house. In her duty log, Kraus added a final line, after over 50 years, the predecessor's suspicion confirmed. File 58, 4721 status changed, from missing to undetermined homicide. 2 days later, when the state vehicle arrived in Olympia, the evidence crates were transferred directly to the secure testing area of the Washington State Forensic Lab. Specialists opened seals, witnessed by investigator Krause and a prosecutor representative. Each item was assigned individual codes: bones, casing, fabric, chair frame, and surrounding cement. The official intake log read, "Adult human skeletal remains of undetermined identity, fully decomposed, with associated evidence, including 1.22 LR shell casing, broken wooden frame, green fabric fragment, and surrounding cement samples." From here, examination was handed to the specialist team under Dr. Michael Barlow, state criminal anthropologist. The first process was skeletal analysis. Samples were cleaned, dried, and classified. Based on pelvic structure, long bone size, and joint development, experts determined the victim was female, estimated age 25-30, height approximately 160 centimeters. The skull had a fracture on the right temple, with a round 6 mm indentation around it, consistent with a .22 bullet entry. The rear bone showed minor cracking from bullet exit pressure, indicating shot direction right to left, slightly downward, about 20-degree angle. Scanning electron microscope analysis found lead and copper traces in bone channels, confirming bullet trauma. Brass fragments from the fracture surface also matched the alloy in Remington .22, long rifle ammunition, common in that era. The next phase was DNA testing. From intact femur and teeth, specialists extracted DNA samples using EDTA phenol method, then analyzed via STR process, modern genetic identification technique. Since Evelyn Grover's medical records and biological samples were gone, the lab contacted her only living relative, her daughter, now in Spokane. A buccal swab was taken for comparison. After 2 weeks of processing and matching, the results report stated, DNA from skeletal remains matches first-degree relative control sample with 99.99987% probability. Identity confirmed, Evelyn Grover. This conclusion ended over 5 decades of unidentified missing status. Once the identity was confirmed, technicians continued examining the bullet and casing. The single casing recovered from under the floor had embossed markings RMUMC22LR. Under a comparison microscope, the firing pin drag marks and primer impressions showed circular concave characteristics matching a Remington .22 handgun, the weapon type registered legally to Christopher Grover in 1956. Ballistic angle analysis indicated the bullet traveled from right to left, downward, with muzzle to target distance estimated at 40 to 50 centimeters. Fractures in the wooden chair frame found at the same location suggested the bullet passed through the chair back before striking the victim. The ballistics report concluded, shot fired at close range, 20-degree oblique angle, direction right to left, bore size, and firing pin marks compatible with Remington .22 LR registered to Christopher Grover. Concurrent with ballistics, the materials chemistry team tested the cement surrounding the burial area. Samples were divided into 2 groups, the top light gray layer and the darker bottom layer with more organic impurities. Using carbon isotope dating and hydration ratio analysis, results showed the bottom cement layer had a chemical age of approximately 1958, matching the disappearance timeline. Additionally, the soil interlayer between cement layers contained numerous fabric fibers and human hairs, partially decomposed. These organics, after extraction and DNA comparison, matched the victim's sample, proving the cement was poured directly over the body. The chemistry team concluded, top cement layer pour dated November, December 1958. Pork and month errors, organic matter in cement consistent with adult human decomposition, buried directly under the floor. The green fabric piece recovered with the remains was washed in preservative solution, then examined under optical microscopy. Cotton rayon blend fibers, twill weave, matching late 1950s as women's fashion. One edge retained a small white plastic button, typical for dresses. Compared to 1958 closet photos of Evelyn in the file, experts identified it as fabric matching the dress described in statements as light green round neck, white buttons. This detail further reinforced identity and death circumstances. Skull analysis showed no secondary impact fractures or defensive forearm breaks, meaning the victim was shot unexpectedly at close range without time to react. Based on wound angle and body position, the team reconstructed the victim seated in the chair when struck. The bullet entered the right temple, exited the rear, path slightly downward, consistent with the shooter standing less than half a meter away. The broken chair frame was confirmed fractured by impact force from behind, not decay. These details ruled out suicide, posture, shot angle, and wound location incompatible with self-infliction. After 3 months of compilation, the Olympia Forensic Lab released a 46-page official conclusion sent to the Cold Case Unit and State Prosecutor's Office. The summary introduction stated, victim identity, Evelyn Grover, female, born 1932, missing November 1958. Cause of death, cranial trauma from .22 LR handgun bullet. Firing distance, 40-50 centimeters. Posture, seated, head tilted right, shot direction right to left. Time of death, corresponding to November 1958. Periel, 1 month. Manner of death, homicide. Firearm, close range. The report ended with Dr. Michael Barlow's signature and the Washington State Chief Medical Examiner's certification. Appendices included ballistics charts, DNA spectra, and wound photos as irrefutable scientific evidence that Evelyn Grover did not disappear voluntarily, but died in her own home, in the winter of 1958, from a close-range bullet. August 2009, after receiving forensic confirmation that the basement remains were Evelyn Grover, investigator Hannah Krause began re-interviewing surviving witnesses. Her goal was to reconstruct the 1958 social context, verify overlooked or altered information from the original investigation. The initial list included 3 people: Mrs. Elizabeth Clifton, next-door neighbor to the Grovers; Dr. Samuel Turner, who treated Evelyn before disappearance; and former Inspector Arthur Bell, now 78. Krause visited Mrs. Clifton first. The wood house still stood at the end of Wynoochee Road, just dozens of meters from the old scene. Clifton was over 80, white-haired but sharp-minded. When Krause mentioned Evelyn Grover, she was silent a long time, then whispered, "I've waited over half a century for someone to ask." She recounted that night, near midnight, while closing windows, hearing a short shout from the Grover house, then a dry, heavy sound, like a small pop or something hitting the wall hard. Afterward, house lights stayed on, but the radio went silent. She said police came the next morning, but when she tried mentioning the pop, they said no need to include it. The man named Dunning said, "That's just thunder or wind echo." "He told me to stay quiet to avoid misunderstanding," she said slowly. Krause asked why she complied. She replied, "Back then, you didn't argue with police. I thought they knew what they were doing, but ever since, I believe something terrible happened in that house." Krause recorded the full interview, then obtained permission to photocopy the 1958 statement Clifton kept in a drawer. The old version only noted, "Heard loud voices and object falling," no mention of the pop. Leaving the house, Krause noted in her log, "Key witness confirms being asked to omit gunshot sound." First evidence of potential investigation interference. Next was Dr. Samuel Turner, retired, living in an Elma nursing home. He greeted Krause cautiously, but upon learning Evelyn's body was found, his expression changed. "I knew that day I should have done differently," he said. In October 1958, Evelyn came for wrist and hip bruises, asked the cause. She said slipped, but fearful eyes made him suspect. "I mentioned it to the sheriff, Dunning. Next day he told me to rewrite the injury description, change to fell on stairs. I refused, but he said claiming abuse would cause unnecessary trouble for both." Turner looked at his aged hands, adding, "I did it. I've regretted it since." He signed a new statement with the note, "I confirm being pressured to alter patient Evelyn Grover's 1958 medical records." Krause saw these details matched Bell's notebook suspicions. She called him, requested a direct meeting. It occurred at his Aberdeen home, in a small room smelling of old paper. Bell had a thick envelope ready, saying, "I've kept this a long time, thinking someone might need it." Inside was a cassette tape and copies of his 1970 original notes. He explained, at that time, he was called to meet Dunning after requesting Grover file review. He told me to sit, then said, "Don't dig that up again, Bell." She left, and that's best for everyone. I recorded the end, not much, but enough to know he wanted silence. Krause had tech digitize the tape. Despite noise and fade, an older male voice was clear. "Don't dig it up. She's gone. Let it rest." Voice sample verified via personnel files and 1965 Police Academy graduation recording, confirming Harold Dunning. In her report to Cold Case Unit, Krause wrote, "Indirect audio evidence of cover-up exists. Medical witness confirms pressure to alter injury records. Neighbor witness confirms hearing shot that night. Statements consistent with 2009 forensic findings." Before leaving Bell's, Krause asked if he ever thought the case would be solved. He smiled tiredly. No one wants truth when it dirties their hands. She closed her notebook silently, looked around the room full of old file cabinets, where an elderly officer had preserved evidence for half a century, believing justice would return. Leaving Aberdeen, light rain fell, droplets on the windshield blending with slow thoughts, every piece revealed, witnesses, records, audio, all leading to the conclusion, deliberately ignored in 1958. In the day's summary log, Krause wrote briefly, "New statements confirm administrative pressure and cover-up. File 58, 4721, sufficient for expanded criminal investigation." After completing witness re-interviews, Hannah Krause and the Cold Case Unit analysis team began the final phase, compiling and linking all old new evidence to reconstruct the Evelyn Grover case timeline. The work took over 2 months, including reviewing financial records, personal papers, and remaining items of Christopher Grover, the husband who died in 1982 from heart disease. Krause's goal was to determine his specific actions before and after his wife's disappearance. In Grays Harbor storage, an old accounting clerk helped her find Montesano Supply Company building materials transaction files, the store supplying cement and paint to Wynoochee residents. Among November 1958 orders was a line November 13th. 5 bags Portland cement, paid in cash, Grover C. Handwritten in black ink, signed C. Grover, beside payment mark. This was the cement type analyzed in the 2009 basement excavation. Chemical comparison between recovered cement and 1958 Portland cement specs matched fully in calcium silicate ratio and aluminum oxide content, common residential cement of the era. This evidence proved the husband purchased and used cement 1 day before the disappearance. Krause re-examined the farewell letter Christopher submitted to police in November 1958, purportedly from Evelyn. The original remained in evidence, paper yellowed but handwriting clear. The Washington State Handwriting Analysis Team used character matching and stroke frequency, comparing to Evelyn's bank signatures and teacher contact book samples from old records. Match rate under 10%, compared to Christopher's tax forms and cement receipt. Similarity 98.4%. The report concluded, handwriting in going away letter by mail, characteristics fully matching Christopher Grover samples, no match with Evelyn Grover samples. Simultaneously, tech reconstructed the full event timeline, starting from verified data, evening of November 14, 1958. Neighbor Elizabeth Clifton heard arguing, then gunshot-like sound, forensic showed 40-50 centimeters shot, 20-degree angle, death time 8 p.m. to midnight. Based on November 13 cement receipt and material analysis, Krause determined pouring occurred within 24 hours, post-death, that is, November 15. Christopher's police statement said, he woke after midnight, found wife gone matching time after body concealment. Compiled data allowed Krause to outline the most logical action sequence, argument, shooting, body concealment, cement pour, report missing. Specifically, evening 11/14. Spouses argue, neighbor hears shot. Post 11/14 night, Christopher uses purchased cement to patch basement floor, concealing body and evidence. Early morning 11/15. He calls police, stages wife missing scenario. 11/15. 16. During police visit, he remains calm, prevents basement access. 11/18. He repaints walls and floor. Eliminates cement smell. Krause's summary was submitted to the state prosecutor's office. Beyond scientific evidence, the file included witness statement copies and Dunning's old recording, showing internal cover-up. Combining motive, opportunity, physical evidence, pointed to one person capable of Evelyn's death, her husband Christopher Grover. October 12, 2009, Washington State Prosecutor Ellen Marks signed approval to reinstitute State of Washington versus Christopher Grover as verification of criminal liability in undetermined homicide. The goal was not to prosecute the deceased, but to clarify investigation failures and restore victim honor. In the approval document, Marks wrote, "Existing physical and witness evidence sufficiently establishes the 1958 incident as murder disguised as disappearance. Administrative investigation required into obstruction of justice by authorities at the time." Upon receiving the decision copy, Krause sent notification to Arthur Bell with thanks. He read it, was silent a long time, then said softly, "In 1958, I wrote that she never left that house. Now it's proven." That statement was later quoted in the Cold Case Unit report as symbolic of the entire process, a man who saw the truth from the start, and another generation that took 50 years to piece together evidence to bring that truth back to the surface. November 2009, after the Washington State Prosecutor approved reinstituting the Evelyn Grover case, the first witness subpoena was sent to Harold Dunning, former Grays Harbor County Sheriff. He was then 91, living in a Tacoma nursing home, frail but mentally sharp. The interrogation occurred in a private room, attended by investigator Hannah Krause, prosecutor Ellen Marks, and a public defender for Dunning's rights. Before the recorder, he sat straight, hands clasped, cloudy eyes on the cold metal table. Krause began by reading the investigation summary, forensic results, physical evidence, Christopher Grover's handwriting, and the 1970 recording with his own voice. Hearing, "Don't dig that up again, she's gone." Dunning closed his eyes, nodded slightly, then said slowly, "I remember." Prosecutor Marks's first question was whether he knew Evelyn Grover was killed in 1958. Dunning was silent a long time, then replied, "I knew, not immediately, but a few days later." He recounted that on the morning of November 16th, Christopher Grover met him privately at the office. The man looked exhausted, hands shaking, said his wife had an accident and died right in the house. According to Dunning, Christopher said she fell, head hit the table, then bled a lot, no breath left. When asked why not call police, Christopher said things got out of control and begged to preserve family honor. Dunning asked no further details, only remembered him crying and saying he'd handle everything. He confessed, "I didn't want scandal for the town. I thought burying it, leaving a missing person file, everyone would be fine." Marks asked if he helped Christopher conceal it. Dunning looked at the ceiling, then said, "I didn't touch it, but I let him do it." He admitted knowing Christopher bought cement, and days after Inspector Arthur Bell requested basement search, he deliberately denied it. "I knew Bell was right, but I wouldn't allow it. I feared the press. That small town would be ruined," he said, voice trembling. Krause asked about altering forensic reports and missing evidence. Dunning nodded slowly. "I ordered it. Basement photo. I had it destroyed. Evidence labels. I changed because I didn't want to see blood. I thought it would end there." Cross-referencing his statement with 1961 documents, Bell discovered every detail matched, loss of photo 7/12. Label change from blood stain to domestic spill. Marks asked if he understood it was illegal. Dunning replied, "Now I do. Then I just wanted to protect the department's name and a man I thought lost control, not a murderer." He admitted meeting Christopher after case closure. They dined at Harbor Inn. "He told me it's all settled. I didn't ask more. We stayed silent the rest of our lives," Dunning said, hands trembling on the blanket edge. Marks requested he sign the statement. He signed aged but clear handwriting. The transcript was sealed on site. In the session's end, Krause asked if he regretted it. Dunning only replied, "I've carried this 50 years. Every time passing Wynoochee, I saw that house in my head. I think she deserved burial, but I lacked courage. Now I just hope the truth is recorded, even late." 1 week later, based on this confession and documents proving file interference, the Washington State Prosecutor's Office formally charged Harold Dunning with obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact. Due to age and health, he was released pending hearing. The state's November 22, 2009 press release stated, former Sheriff Harold Dunning, 91, admitted concealing evidence and altering records in the 1958 Evelyn Grover case. The incident marks one of the longest recorded obstructions of justice in Washington. Asked about the confession's meaning, Hannah Krause told media, "He didn't kill, but he helped bury the truth for half a century." At the nursing home, Dunning declined interviews. In his final tape to his lawyer, he said, "If I could go back to 1958, I'd let Belle dig that floor. I wanted the town quiet, but I chose the quiet of lies." 3 days after charges were announced, Harold Dunning was hospitalized for heart failure. Before dying in January 2010, he left a handwritten statement for the court. Final line, "I confirm knowing and agreeing to help Christopher Grover conceal his wife's body. I take full responsibility for preventing justice from reaching that woman." That belated confession closed the silent circle he built for over 50 years, opening a new phase for the case, when old crime was revisited in the undeniable light of truth. February 2010. After Harold Dunning's confession was public and the Evelyn Grover case officially recorded as homicide, Washington State assigned the Olympia Forensic Lab the investigation's final step. 3D scene reconstruction based on all ballistics data, evidence positions, and witness statements. The goal was to determine the exact sequence of the night of November 14, 1958, the murder time. This was the first time a case over half a century old in the state was recreated with modern technology. The team included ballistics experts, simulation engineers, and forensic anthropologists. All data was digitized. Arthur Bell's original scene sketch, 1958 and 2009 basement photos, shot angle diagram from the exam report, and neighbor Elizabeth Clifton's statement about the small pop sound from the Grover house that night. Using this, the team rebuilt the house structure in 4D 3D Studio software. Basement 5.2 meters wide, 2.3 meters high, 9-step wooden stairs descending west. The broken chair position was placed per original photo coordinates, 1.7 meters from stair base. Entering ballistics data, specialists used exam parameters. 22 LR bullet, 20-degree downward angle, 0.45 meter distance, right to left direction. They fitted a life-size victim model, seated in the chair, head slightly tilted right. Running the simulation, the bullet originated half a meter from the victim, 20 centimeters above head, matching a 1.80 m man's height, standing beside the chair. The path pierced the right temple, through the chair back, embedding in the rear wood wall, exactly matching the dent in old wood, recovered from the floor. The audio system recreated a .22 gunshot in low reverb enclosed space, closely resembling the hard impact Clifton heard. The next reconstruction was post-shot actions. Based on mud traces, shoe positions, and broken frame, tech calculated the victim falling sideways from the chair, dragging 30 centimeters on the wood floor, leaving the blood streak found in the kitchen. Simulation showed, if the perpetrator dragged the body through the basement door within 10 minutes, mud and fluid would spread, matching original photo streak patterns. Adding time factors, night temperature about 41 degrees Fahrenheit, pine wood floor moisture absorption, the software showed blood darkening in 20-25 minutes, consistent with 2009 forensic oxidation report. The team also simulated concealment. Cement poured in 1.8 x 0.9 m area, average 6 centimeters thick, taking about 40 minutes with 5 bags, matching the November 13th receipt Christopher purchased. Running light simulation, kitchen lamp casting down the floor, reflecting through open basement door, the recreated image exactly matched the neighbor's light glowing all-night description. After completion, the expert team compared the 3D results with all physical evidence. The victim's actual skull was CT scanned and overlaid into the model to precisely determine bullet trajectory. Error between model and real autopsy findings under 2.5% comma rated, complete match within technical limits. Chair structure and body fall direction also aligned with the broken wooden frame found with the remains. A notable detail, the green fabric adhered to cement lay exactly at right hip level, the point corresponding to bullet exit after passing through the body, suggesting the perpetrator may have wrapped the body in the victim's own dress before pouring cement. The 87-page reconstruction report, with 12 simulation graphics and a 4-minute 3D video, was submitted to Olympia Court as supplemental evidence. In the conclusion, the experts wrote, "Simulation results show the event occurred in enclosed space, with a single close-range shot from the victim's right, matching bullet direction, evidence, and witness statements about the sound on the night of November 14, 1958. No self-inflicted or accidental scenario exists. All physical data prove this was concealed homicide." Prosecutor Ellen Marks received the report, signed it into the case file. At a brief press conference afterward, she said, "Science did what people in 1958 wouldn't listen to what the scene had to say." The forensics team also printed a miniature of the 3D reconstruction images, sent to Arthur Bell, who started all suspicions over half a century earlier. Seeing the virtual house with the broken chair and yellow light, he only said, "That's how truth finds its way back." 3 weeks later, the 3D simulation report was officially attached to State of Washington versus Christopher Grover, Section Physical Evidence. Exhibit F. The state prosecutor's office sent confirmation that the 2010 scene reconstruction is the final technical basis solidifying the Evelyn Grover case conclusion, murdered by firearm in her own home. In the cold case unit's internal log, Hannah Krause wrote a short line closing the nearly 1,000-page file. "Half a century later, we heard again the single shot they once tried to make disappear." The trial of State of Washington v. Harold Dunning opened at the Washington State Supreme Court in Olympia on June 14, 2009, in a heavy but specially public-interested atmosphere. This was the first time in state history a case concealed for over half a century was formally tried with full forensic evidence, witness statements, and altered administrative documents. The courtroom was packed with reporters, cold case unit representatives, and those involved from 1958, including investigator Arthur Bell, now 78, seated in the front row. State prosecutor Hannah Krause, who directly reinvestigated the case, stood first before the court. In her opening statement, she spoke briefly but firmly, "We are not here to try a dead man, Christopher Grover, but to expose the guilt of those who let the truth be buried with Evelyn Grover for 51 years. She placed before the panel a nearly 200-page file containing all DNA test results, ballistics analysis, cement material report, new witness statement copies, and Bell's original notes. Krause presented the event sequence. First, discovery of Evelyn's body in her old home basement in 2009. Then scientific results, DNA matching her daughter, .22 Remington bullet, fired at 40-50 centimeters, matching the gun Christopher Grover owned. She projected the 3D reconstruction on the large screen, showing the bullet path right to left through the victim's head. She said, "Science proved what people in 1958 refused to acknowledge, this was murder." Then she moved to the core, Harold Dunning's concealment. First evidence, 1958, scene report copy and later altered version. The two documents side by side on screen, zoomed on the changed line. Bloodstain crossed out and replaced with domestic spill. Second evidence, 1970 tape, where Dunning's voice said, "Don't dig that up again." Krause requested playing the 20-second clip. In the courtroom, the old audio echoed, muffled but clear enough for all to hear the weariness and hesitation. Third evidence, Dunning's official confession signed November 22, 2009, confirming he knew and agreed to help Christopher Grover preserve honor. Krause asserted, "This was not professional error, this was deliberate, an intentional act to distort records protecting a killer and the county sheriff's reputation." Dunning's silence delayed justice for 51 years. She presented supporting evidence, November 13, 1958, cement receipt, the going-away letter, in Christopher Grover's handwriting, and Dr. Turner's statement confirming pressure to alter injury records. Each document page appeared on screen, carefully cross-referenced. When defense turn came, Dunning's lawyer Richard Hale did not deny facts. He opened, "My client lacks strength to justify, but I asked the court to note his actions stemmed from era's misguided views." He said in 1958, "Officers like Dunning were obsessed with town reputation over legal duty." He was wrong. But for half a century, he lived with that burden. That was the heaviest sentence. Krause responded, voice calm not harsh, "Conscience burden does not replace justice." Had he spoken in 1958, a woman would not be buried under cement, and a community would not live with lies. She ended with a quote from Arthur Bell's journal, displayed on screen. "No evidence shows the victim left the house." The panel of 3 judges and 6 citizens sat silent, nearly 10 minutes after arguments. Outside, Olympia rain fell, courtroom windows fogged. When court announced recess for deliberation, the entire room stood. By afternoon, verdict was read. Harold Dunning guilty of obstruction of justice and accessory after the fact. However, considering age, health, and cooperation, court sentenced 10 years suspended, lifetime probation, permanent revocation of police title. When the presiding judge asked if he had final words, Dunning stood slowly, hands trembling on the chair, said briefly, "I deserve conviction. Evelyn Grover deserved her name." Heard again. In the courtroom, Hannah Krause bowed her head. Arthur Bell sat motionless, and Evelyn's daughter in the back row burst into tears, clutching a black and white photo of her mother. After trial, the state prosecutor's office issued an official press release. After 51 years, Evelyn Grover disappearance confirmed as homicide. Truth buried in 1958, now restored through modern forensics and later investigators' persistence. Major state newspapers ran headlines, "Cold case solved, after 51 years, justice for Evelyn Grover." That evening, local TV news showed the now-filled basement with a small wooden plaque engraved, "In memory of Evelyn Grover, 1932-1958. Justice found, 2009. Hannah Krause stood before cameras, spoke briefly. "We cannot go back to 1958, but we can ensure from now on, no one can silence the truth again." The sentence, though light, marked the closing of a wound that had lingered in the Grays Harbor community for over half a century. In the cold case unit's final summary file, the last line was bolded, "Case hash 584721, Evelyn Grover. Status, cold case solved, after 51 years." And at the very bottom was the blue ink signature of the lead investigator, Hannah Krause. In the weeks following the Olympia trial, the Evelyn Grover case became the focus of statewide media in Washington. Major newspapers like the Seattle Times, the Olympian, and Tacoma News-Tribune all ran articles with similar headlines. "Justice, after 51 years, Evelyn Grover case redefines cold case investigations." Television stations replayed footage of the excavated basement, the courtroom, and the 3D simulation video, recreating the moments the .22 bullet flew across the small room. A PBS Washington documentary produced a special report detailing the half-century investigation, from Arthur Bell discovering the fresh cement smell to Hannah Krause recovering the old negative film box. Black and white 1958 images were interspersed with modern color footage, creating a haunting comparison between the darkness of silence and the light of forensic science. In Grays Harbor, the usually quiet Montesano community suddenly became a pilgrimage site for reporters and criminal investigation students. Montesano High School, where Christopher Grover once coached gym, removed his name plaque from the sports memorial area. By Lake Wynoochee, local authorities and the victim's family erected a gray granite memorial stone engraved with simple words, Evelyn Grover, 1932-1958. Found, after 51 years. Truth never lost. At the dedication, over 100 locals attended, including those who witnessed the kitchen light burning all night that year. Evelyn's daughter, now over 50, spoke briefly, "My mother never left that house. Now everyone knows that's the truth." The Washington State Attorney General's office also held a special press conference announcing the Grover case as a model file for statewide cold case unit training. In the internal guideline issued October 2010, the opening stated, "The Evelyn Grover case demonstrates the importance of long-term evidence and investigation record preservation. Administrative errors and subjective factors in the 1950s delayed justice for 51 years. The report was used as teaching material in courses on evidence preservation, sealing procedures, and independent investigator reporting duties." Hannah Krause and Olympia forensics experts were frequently invited to speak at national cold case seminars. At a 2011 University of Washington presentation, she projected the 3D scene reconstruction, then said, "When Bell wrote Fresh Cement Smells in his notebook, he never imagined that half a century later that small detail would reopen the door to justice." That same year, the State Police Internal Affairs Office released the Historical Review Report 1950-1970, citing the Grover case as a prime example of cover-up culture in post-war local investigations. The report detailed errors, failure to send blood samples to state lab, unauthorized forensic report changes, denied basement search warrant, and scene photo destruction. The conclusion stated, "Without individual investigator Arthur Bell's intervention and modern cold case succession, this truth might have been buried forever." The report was presented to the state legislature and became the basis for new evidence management law, requiring all criminal case items preserved for at least 75 years. For the Grays Harbor community, the Evelyn Grover case left profound aftershocks. Many who grew up believing Mrs. Grover walked out now faced the reality that a murder occurred right in their small town, concealed by silence and false honor. Local newspapers opened a column Old Cases, New Lessons, inviting residents to share memories of unresolved incidents. A new generation of officers was taught that every detail has a voice. At the 2012 State Police Academy graduation, Arthur Bell's name was read in the Lifetime Justice Guardians list, and his daughter accepted an honorary plaque for him. He had passed the previous year. Hannah Krause, post-case, was promoted to deputy commander of the cold case unit. In a Kiro interview, she said, "The Grover case reminds us justice doesn't always come early, but it will, if evidence is preserved and someone is patient enough to search." That quote was later engraved on a brass plaque in the Olympia Forensic Lab main hallway, below the words "Justice delayed is still justice." In 2015, for the 60th anniversary of the Washington State Patrol, the Grover file was selected for the Cold Cases That Changed Law Enforcement exhibit. On the wall, two items were displayed side by side, the 1958 broken chair photo and the 2010 3D reconstruction model. Beneath each was the same line: "Truth preserved by evidence." Over half a century after the single shot rang out in the small Wynoochee house, the Evelyn Grover story became a symbol of science's capability and the perseverance of those who believe in justice. In the cold case unit's final report, the ending stated, "Advancements in modern forensics, combined with long-term record preservation and professional dedication, brought justice back to the woman a previous generation overlooked." At the Wynoochee Lake Memorial, fresh flowers are replaced monthly. The calm water reflects the deeply engraved words in stone, a quiet reminder to everyone in Washington's investigation field. No secret stays buried forever under cement, and no truth sleeps if someone still seeks it. The story of the Evelyn Grover case, a woman murdered and hidden in her own home in 1958, only found after over half a century, is not just a personal tragedy, but reflects much about American society today. Rereading each detail, Sheriff Harold Dunning deliberately altering reports to preserve town honor, a man like Arthur Bell forced silent despite seeing crime signs or evidence, shoes, fabric, cement smell, dismissed due to bias about wives voluntarily leaving. We clearly see the value of transparency, courage, and modern forensics. Today's America, though far advanced, still faces similar challenges: bias in law enforcement, tendencies to protect institutions over people, and fear of speaking truth when it shames the community. The lesson of the Evelyn Grover case is, justice doesn't come on its own. It needs guardians and time. If Arthur Bell hadn't kept notes on fresh cement smell or old film, if Hannah Krause hadn't believed a handwritten line could overturn history, the truth would be forever buried. In today's American society, where technology records everything, from surveillance cameras to DNA data, human ethical responsibility is greater, not letting truth be distorted, not letting power or honor replace right. Every American, whether police, citizen, or journalist, can learn from this case a simple yet profound truth: silence can kill justice, but persistence and honesty can revive it, even if it takes a lifetime. If you believe every truth, no matter how long buried, deserves to be found, please subscribe to join us in continuing the journey to uncover forgotten cases. Thank you for following the story of Evelyn Grover. See you in the next video, where justice and memory are awakened once more.